My sister-in-law had been pregnant for 15 fucking months. Her belly looked like a grotesque, overinflated balloon ready to burst. When I begged her to see a doctor, my batshit crazy mother snapped at me like a rabid dog. My grandson is a miracle. He's like the second coming of Jesus. Miracles take time. I didn't listen. I dragged my sister-in-law to the clinic anyway. The diagnosis: no baby, just a massive pulsating tumor. Instead of thanking me, those ungrateful bitches pushed me down a flight of stairs screaming that I killed their golden child. But when I opened my eyes again, the blood was gone. I was back in the car on the way to the hospital. This time I'm going to sit back, grab some popcorn, and watch them burn in the hell they created. I was sitting in the back of an Uber just pulling up to the hospital entrance. The driver honked the horn. "All right, folks, Mercy General Hospital, we're here." My sister-in-law Tiffany turned to me, her face twisted in that familiar, entitled sneer. "Chloe, what the hell did you bring me to a hospital? I told you I don't need a checkup. My baby is perfect," she whined, rubbing her freakishly large stomach. I froze. The cold sweat on my back was real. The smell of the cheap air freshener was real. I was back. I was back on the day I died, the day I tried to save the stupid bitch. I immediately whipped out my phone and changed the destination on the Uber app. I leaned forward, forcing a smile. "Hey, driver, I think the GPS is messing with you. Check the app again. We aren't stopping here." The driver glanced at his phone and shrugged. "My bad, miss." It updated, heading to Mommy and Me Boutique now. Tiffany looked confused, her beady eyes narrowing. I turned to her, putting on my best fake-ass sisterly voice. "Tiffany, look at you. You're about to pop. I realized bringing you to a doctor was rude. I wanted to take you shopping instead. I'm gonna buy my future nephew some designer clothes, show some love from his favorite auntie." Her eyes lit up like a Christmas tree. Greed instantly replaced her suspicion. "Well, finally, that's more like it. About time you started acting like a supportive aunt." We spent an hour in the boutique. I bought a bunch of overpriced baby crap, and she waddled out looking smug as hell. Before we left, she even swiped a free sample can of expensive formula. Whatever. A few $100 is a cheap price to pay to keep my life. In my past life, I forced her to see the doctor. The doctor detained us, looking grim. "If we don't operate now, she's dead in 2 months," he had said. "That mass inside her, we don't know if it's benign or malignant." They cut her open and pulled out a 10-pound ball of rotting flesh. Tiffany couldn't handle the truth. She was terrified the neighbors would laugh at her for birthing a tumor instead of a son. So she convinced my mom it was my fault. My mom, that psycho, roared like a lioness. "You jealous, barren bitch. Your brother finally gets a son, and you ruin it. It's a miracle baby, like biblical times. You killed my golden grandson. Now you die with him." Then they shoved me off the balcony. "Not this time. Respect others' fate, right? I hope they live a long, miserable life." It was pouring rain when we got back. We were soaked. As soon as we walked in, Mom came out of the kitchen with a bowl of hot soup for Tiffany. She glared at me with pure venom. "Chloe, her belly is huge. Why did you drag her out in this weather? If anything happens to my grandson, I will skin you alive." My brother Travis rushed over with a towel to dry Tiffany's hair. He was practically drooling over her stomach, adding fuel to the fire. "Chloe, just because you can't lay an egg doesn't mean you should crack ours." Well, Travis was technically right. Tiffany was carrying an egg, a literal meat egg. I've been married 3 years, but I wanted to focus on my career. In my last life, my husband Ethan suffered the most. After Tiffany hacked me to death, Ethan took care of my family out of guilt. He even signed over our 3 rental properties to them. He didn't know the murderers were sleeping in his guest room. Eventually, they killed him too. To Mom and Travis, Tiffany's belly was a holy grail. Mom spent her mornings at church and her nights burning sage and praying to weird statues. Before dinner, she'd chant, "Lord, please protect the heir of our family." Then she'd look at Tiffany like a prize pig. "See, Tiffany, if I didn't pray every day, you wouldn't be this big this fast." In the past, I tried to tell Mom that a 15-month pregnancy wasn't normal. Mom called me an idiot. "Don't curse us. Her belly is pointy. That means it's a boy. You went to college and you're still dumb as a rock. You don't know shit about ripe fruit falling from the tree." Ripe fruit. Tiffany was carrying a ticking time bomb. Tiffany sat on the couch massaging her ego. "Thanks, Mom. It's all because of you that I have this miracle." I handed Mom the bag of baby clothes. She frowned immediately. "Why the hell is this pink? You want my grandson to look like a fairy?" Tiffany had picked them out, but of course it was my fault. Tiffany smirked, throwing me under the bus. "I know, right? I wanted blue. But Chloe insisted pink was trendy." She turned to me, eyes gleaming. Since you messed up, just Venmo me $1,000. I'll go buy the right ones myself and add extra for mom supplements and buy Travis a carton of Marlboros. He's been stressed. I saw right through her. She wanted cash. Mom nodded aggressively. Do it, Chloe. Look how hard she's working carrying that baby. I didn't argue. I tapped on my phone. A few minutes later, a delivery driver knocked on the door. Mom. I smiled sweetly. The store called. They made a mistake. They sent over the blue ones for free, and we can keep the pink ones. Mom beamed, forgetting about the cash. See, even God knows my grandson needs blue. Tiffany glared at me, furious she didn't get the money. Month 15 of the pregnancy, Tiffany's appetite became monstrous. Family-sized rice cooker wasn't enough. Mom had to drag out a massive catering pot, cooking 5 gallons of grits and stew at a time. I watched Tiffany eat. It was disgusting. She threw away the fork, then the spoon. She started scooping food into her mouth with her bare hands, shoving it down her throat like a wild animal. She didn't even chew. She just swallowed. Her stomach was a bottomless pit. My brother, who weighs 250 pounds, doesn't eat half that much. Mom just kept piling food onto her plate, grinning like a maniac. Eat, eat. A big appetite means a strong, husky boy. Then she turned to scowl at me. Look at you, skinny as a rail. No wonder you're barren. Work, work, work. What's the point if you don't breed? I lost my appetite watching Tiffany gorge herself. She snatched my bowl away. You gonna eat that? You're too slow. She finished it in seconds, let out a wet burp and laughed. I'm eating for 2 men, Mom. 5 minutes later, she was hungry again. The rice wasn't cooking fast enough, so Tiffany ran out to the backyard garden. She dove into the dirt and started gnawing on raw sweet potatoes, dirt and all. Travis just stood there rubbing her back. Look at that, Mom. My seed is savage. He squatted next to her like a redneck farmhand, swatting away flies while his wife ate dirt. When Tiffany looked up, her eyes were wild, feral, like a predator. I took a step back. The moonlight caught the grease smeared across Tiffany's chin, the dirt caked under her fingernails. There was something deeply wrong with this picture, something primal and horrifying that my family refused to acknowledge. But I wasn't their keeper anymore. I had tried once, and it had cost me everything. This time, I was just a spectator. That night, I lay in bed next to Ethan, staring at the ceiling. The memory of my death was still fresh, the sensation of falling, the crack of my skull against concrete, the warm spread of blood pooling beneath my head. I had died in agony while my mother stood over me, screaming about her murdered grandson. Ethan rolled over, his arm draping across my waist. You okay? You've been quiet all day. I turned to face him. In the dim light filtering through the curtains, his features were soft, vulnerable. This man had loved me enough to destroy himself trying to honor my memory. In my past life, after I died, he had spiraled into depression and guilt. My family had manipulated him ruthlessly, convincing him that supporting them was supporting me. They had drained him financially, emotionally, and when he finally saw through their lies and threatened to cut them off, Travis had staged a robbery and beaten him to death with a baseball bat. Ethan, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion I couldn't fully hide. If I asked you to trust me on something that sounded completely insane, would you? He propped himself up on one elbow, studying my face with those clear blue eyes. You know I would. What's going on? I took a breath. I couldn't tell him about the rebirth. He'd think I'd lost my mind. But I could start planting seeds. I think we need to distance ourselves from my family. Financially, emotionally, all of it. His brow furrowed. Because of the pregnancy thing? I know your mom is being crazy about it, but it's not just that. I sat up, pulling the blanket around myself. There's something really wrong with them, Ethan. The way they're treating Tiffany, the delusions about this miracle baby, the way they talk to me. I have a bad feeling. A really, really bad feeling. He was silent for a long moment, processing. You think they'd hurt you? The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Yes, I said simply. I think if it came down to choosing between me and whatever fantasy they've built around Tiffany's pregnancy, they'd choose the fantasy. Every time. Ethan's jaw tightened. I could see the protective instinct flare in his eyes, the same instinct that had made him an easy target in my past life. Then we protect ourselves. What do you need me to do? Relief flooded through me. First, I need you to promise me something. No matter what happens, no matter what sob story they come to you with, you will never, ever give them access to our money or our properties. Not a loan, not a gift, nothing. Done, he said without hesitation. What else? I'm going to start documenting everything. Their behavior, their finances, everything. And I want us to update our wills, set up a trust, make sure that if anything happens to either of us, my family gets nothing." Ethan reached out and cupped my face gently. "Chloe, you're scaring me. Did something happen? Did they threaten you?" "Not yet," I said, which was technically true for this timeline. "But I know them. I know how they think. And I'm not going to let them destroy us." He pulled me into his arms, and I let myself sink into his warmth. "We'll handle it together," he murmured into my hair. "I've got your back." I closed my eyes, memorizing this moment. In my last life, I hadn't protected him. I had been too naive, too hopeful, too convinced that blood meant loyalty. This time, I would be smarter. This time, we would both survive. Week 3 of my rebirth, I had fallen into a routine. During the day, I went to work at the marketing firm where I was a junior account manager. I threw myself into projects with renewed focus, volunteering for overtime, pitching creative campaigns, making myself indispensable. My boss, a sharp-eyed woman named Margaret, noticed immediately. "Chloe, whatever lit a fire under you, I approve," she said, reviewing my latest presentation. "This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need. I'm putting you on the Sanderson account." The Sanderson account was huge, a multi-million-dollar tech company looking to rebrand. It was the kind of opportunity that could make or break a career. In my past life, I had turned it down because I was too distracted by my family's drama, too busy trying to convince them to take Tiffany to a real doctor. Margaret had given the account to my colleague Derek instead, and he had ridden that success all the way to senior director. Not this time. "Thank you," I said, keeping my voice professional even as triumph surged through me. "I won't let you down." At home, I was equally strategic. I hired a private investigator to dig into my family's finances. What he uncovered was illuminating. Travis had gambling debts totaling $47,000. Mom had 3 maxed-out credit cards and a reverse mortgage on the house she swore was paid off. Tiffany had been fired from her receptionist job 8 months ago for stealing from petty cash and had been living off Travis ever since. They were a house of cards waiting to collapse. And when Tiffany's tumor finally ruptured and the medical bills started rolling in, they would come crawling to Ethan and me like the parasites they were. But this time, the door would be locked. I also started seeing a therapist, Dr. Caroline Reeves, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. I couldn't tell her about the rebirth, but I could talk about my family's toxicity, my fears, my complicated feelings about watching someone suffer when I knew I could prevent it. "You're describing a pattern of emotional abuse and manipulation," Dr. Reeves said during one session, her pen poised over her notepad. "Your mother uses guilt and obligation as weapons. Your brother enables his wife's worst behaviors. And you've been conditioned to believe that because they're family, you owe them unconditional support." "But don't I?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "They're my family. Family is supposed to be a source of love and support, not a source of trauma," she said gently. "You're allowed to protect yourself, Chloe. You're allowed to walk away from people who hurt you, even if you share DNA." Her words were a balm I hadn't known I needed. Month 16. Tiffany's condition was deteriorating rapidly. Her skin had taken on a grayish, waxy quality, like melted candle wax stretched over bone. Dark veins spiderwebbed across her distended belly, pulsing visibly with each labored breath she took. The stench emanating from her was unbearable, a sickly sweet rot mixed with body odor and something metallic, like old pennies left in the sun. But Mom and Travis saw none of it. To them, she was glowing. "Look at her," Mom cooed one evening, running her hand over Tiffany's stomach. "She's radiant. Absolutely radiant." I watched from the doorway, my expression carefully neutral. Tiffany was sprawled on the couch, her maternity dress hiked up to expose her grotesque belly. She had stopped wearing shoes weeks ago because her feet were too swollen. Her eyes had a glassy, distant quality, like she was somewhere far away. Travis knelt beside her, pressing his ear to her stomach. "I can't hear him," he whispered reverently. "I can't hear his heartbeat." What he was hearing was the tumor. It had grown so large that it was pressing against Tiffany's organs, causing all sorts of internal havoc. But I said nothing. I had learned my lesson about trying to save people who didn't want to be saved. Mom turned to me suddenly, her eyes narrowing. "Why are you just standing there? Make yourself useful. Go get Tiffany some pickles and ice cream." "I'm actually heading out," I said smoothly. "Ethan and I have dinner plans." "Cancel them," Mom snapped. "Your sister-in-law needs—" "She's not my sister-in-law," I interrupted, my voice calm but firm. "She's Travis's wife." If she needs something, Travis can get it for her. The room went silent. Mom's face turned an alarming shade of purple. Travis looked up from Tiffany's belly, his expression shocked. Tiffany's eyes focused on me for the first time in weeks, glittering with malice. "Excuse me?" Mom's voice was dangerously quiet. "You heard me," I said, slinging my purse over my shoulder. "I'm not your errand girl. I have my own life, my own priorities. If you need help, ask your son. He's the one who got her pregnant." I walked out before any of them could respond, my heart pounding with exhilaration. In my past life, I had been meek, desperate for their approval. I had twisted myself into knots trying to be the perfect daughter, the perfect sister, the perfect aunt to a baby that didn't exist. This time, I was done performing. Ethan was waiting in the car outside, engine running. As I slid into the passenger seat, he looked at me with concern. "You okay? You look flushed." "I'm perfect," I said, buckling my seatbelt. "I just told my family to fuck off." A slow smile spread across his face. "Yeah? How'd that feel?" "Fucking incredible." He laughed and pulled out of the driveway. As we drove away, I glanced back at the house. Through the living room window, I could see Mom gesticulating wildly, probably ranting about my disrespect. Travis had his head in his hands. Tiffany was staring after our car with an expression of pure hatred. Good. Let them hate me. Hatred I could live with. It was their false love, their manipulative affection, that had killed me before. Month 17. The call came at 2:47 a.m. I had been expecting it. "Chloe." Travis's voice was panicked, nearly incoherent. "You need to come to the hospital right now." "Tiffany," she collapsed. "There's so much blood." I sat up slowly, turning on the bedside lamp. Ethan stirred beside me, squinting against the light. "What hospital?" I asked, my voice steady. "Mercy General." "Please, Chloe, Mom is losing her mind. I don't know what to do. The doctors are saying." "I'll be there in 30 minutes, I said, and hung up. Ethan was already pulling on his jeans. "Is it the tumor?" "Probably." I dressed methodically, choosing comfortable clothes, pulling my hair into a ponytail. There was no rush. Whatever was happening had already happened. My presence wouldn't change the outcome. When we arrived at the hospital, the emergency room was chaos. Mom was screaming at a nurse, her face blotchy and swollen from crying. Travis paced back and forth, his hands shaking so badly he kept dropping his phone. A security guard stood nearby, looking ready to intervene if things escalated. I approached calmly. "What's the situation?" Mom whirled on me, her eyes wild. "They're trying to kill my grandson. They want to cut Tiffany open and murder him." A doctor emerged from behind the nurse's station, a middle-aged South Asian woman with tired eyes and a professional demeanor. "Are you family?" "I'm the patient's sister-in-law," I said. "This is her husband." I gestured to Travis, who looked like he might vomit. The doctor's expression was grave. "Your wife is in critical condition. She has a large abdominal mass that has begun to rupture. She's septic, and if we don't operate immediately, she will die. We need consent for emergency surgery." "See." Mom shrieked. "They want to cut out my grandson." "There is no grandson," the doctor said, her patience clearly wearing thin. "There is no baby. Your daughter-in-law has a teratoma, a type of tumor. It's been mimicking pregnancy symptoms, but ma'am, there has never been a viable fetus." Travis made a choking sound. His face had gone pale, his eyes huge in his skull. That's not possible. She's been pregnant for 17 months, I finished quietly. Which should have been your first clue that something was wrong. Mom lunged at me, her hands outstretched like claws. "You did this. You cursed her. You barren, jealous witch." The security guard stepped between us. "Ma'am, I need you to calm down, or you'll be removed from the hospital." The doctor looked at Travis. "Sir, we need your consent. Every minute we waste, your wife is closer to death." Travis's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the pen. Will she live? If we operate now, her chances are good. But the tumor has caused significant internal damage. She'll need extensive follow-up care." Travis signed the consent forms with a trembling hand. Mom collapsed into a chair, sobbing. I stood against the wall, arms crossed, watching it all unfold exactly as I remembered, except this time, I wasn't the one bleeding out on a balcony. This time, I was safe. The surgery took 8 hours. They removed a 13-pound teratoma, even larger than in my previous life. The surgical team said it was one of the most complex cases they'd ever handled. The tumor had hair, teeth, fragments of bone, and partially formed organs. It was grotesque, medical textbook material. Tiffany survived, but barely. She woke up 3 days later in the ICU, weak and disoriented. When the doctor explained what had happened, she turned her face to the wall and refused to speak. Mom refused to accept reality. She insisted the doctors had lied, that they had stolen her grandson, and were covering it up. She tried to file a police report, but the officers took one look at the medical records and gently suggested she seek psychiatric help. Travis oscillated between denial and despair. He sat by Tiffany's bedside, holding her limp hand, murmuring apologies she didn't acknowledge. I visited once, bringing flowers for appearance's sake. Ethan came with me, his hand a steady presence on my lower back. Tiffany's eyes tracked me as I entered the room. They were hollow, red-rimmed, filled with a hatred so pure it was almost tangible. "You knew," she rasped, her voice raw from the intubation tube. "You fucking knew, and you didn't tell me." "I tried to tell you," I said calmly. 16 months ago, when I wanted to take you to the hospital. You called me jealous. Your mother called me a curse. So I stepped back and let you make your own choices. You let me walk around with a tumor for over a year. You're an adult," I said. "You made your own medical decisions. I'm not responsible for your refusal to see a doctor." She tried to sit up, but the pain made her gasp and fall back against the pillows. "The neighbors," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Everyone knows. Everyone is laughing at me. I gave birth to a tumor. I'm a freak." I felt nothing. No pity, no satisfaction, just a cold, empty distance. "You'll recover," I said. "Physically, at least." Travis stood up, his face twisted with anger. "How can you be so cold? This is your family. This is your wife," I corrected. "Your responsibility, not mine." I turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and before you ask, no, Ethan and I won't be helping with the medical bills. You're on your own." 3 weeks post-surgery, the hospital bills started arriving. The total was staggering, $287,000 for the emergency surgery, ICU stay, medications, and follow-up care. Travis and Tiffany had bare-bones insurance that covered maybe 30% of it. They were drowning. Mom called me 17 times in one day. I blocked her number. Travis showed up at our house, pounding on the door, begging for help. Ethan answered, his expression hard. "We need money," Travis said, his voice cracking. "We're going to lose everything. The house, the car, everything. Please, Chloe, you have the rental properties, you have savings." "No," I said, appearing behind Ethan. "I don't owe you anything. We're family." "You're parasites," I said flatly. "You've been leeching off me for years. Free babysitting for a baby that didn't exist. Money for supplements and Marlboros. Emotional labor, trying to convince you people to see reason. And how did you repay me?" I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "In my darkest hour, when I needed you most, you would have thrown me away like garbage. So no, Travis. You get nothing from me." His face crumpled. "I don't understand. When did you become so cruel?" "I became smart," I said. "There's a difference." I stepped back and Ethan closed the door in his face. Through the window, I watched Travis stumble back to his beat-up sedan, his shoulders shaking with sobs. I felt nothing. Dr. Reeves had been right. I didn't owe them unconditional support. I didn't owe them my financial security or my peace of mind. I had spent one lifetime trying to save them from themselves, and it had cost me everything. Not again. 6 months after the surgery, my life had transformed beyond recognition. The Sanderson account had been a massive success. My innovative campaign had increased their brand recognition by 34% and their sales by 22% in the first quarter alone. Margaret promoted me to senior account manager with a $40,000 raise. I was being headhunted by bigger firms, fielding offers that would have been unthinkable a year ago. Ethan's tech startup had secured series of funding to the tune of $3.5 million. He hired a small team, rented a sleek office space downtown, and threw himself into building something meaningful. The stress of my family's drama had evaporated, and he was thriving. We moved out of our modest 2-bedroom condo and into a stunning penthouse loft with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. We bought expensive art. We traveled. A long weekend in Paris, 2 weeks in Thailand, a spontaneous trip to Iceland to see the Northern Lights. We lived loudly, beautifully, unapologetically. Meanwhile, Travis and Tiffany's marriage disintegrated. The stress of the medical debt, the humiliation, the shattered delusions, it was too much. Tiffany filed for divorce 8 months after the surgery, claiming Travis had been complicit in medically neglecting her. The courts didn't see it that way, but the marriage was over regardless. Travis moved back in with Mom, who had become a recluse. She stopped going to church, stopped praying, stopped leaving the house. Neighbors reported that she sat in her living room surrounded by baby clothes and unopened packages of diapers, muttering about conspiracies and stolen miracles. I heard all this through the grapevine, former neighbors, distant relatives, people who thought I should know what's happening with my family. I listened politely and changed the subject. They weren't my problem anymore. 1 year after my rebirth, on a crisp October evening, Ethan and I hosted a dinner party at our penthouse. Our guests were successful, interesting people: Margaret and her husband, Ethan's business partner, a few friends from our university days who had gone on to impressive careers. We served wine that cost more than Travis's monthly rent. We laughed about trips to Napa Valley and debates over whether to buy a vacation home in Aspen or the Hamptons. The conversation flowed easily, touching on art exhibitions, tech innovations, political analyses. At one point, Margaret pulled me aside on the balcony. The city sparkled below us, a sea of lights stretching to the horizon. "I have to tell you, Chloe, when you first started at the firm, I wasn't sure about you. You seemed distracted, weighed down by something." I admitted, sipping my champagne. I was carrying a lot of other people's problems. "Well, you've certainly shed that weight," she said with approval. "You're a different person now. Focused, confident, unstoppable. I'm recommending you for the director track. If you keep up this trajectory, you could be running the firm in 5 years. Pride swelled in my chest, not the hollow, desperate need for approval I'd once craved from my family, but genuine satisfaction in my own accomplishments. "Thank you, Margaret. That means everything to me." As the party wound down and our guests departed, Ethan and I stood on the balcony together, his arms wrapped around me from behind. The October wind was cool against my skin, carrying the scent of distant rain. "Happy," he murmured into my hair. I thought about it. In my past life, this time of year had been filled with anguish. I had been dead for months, and Ethan had been spiraling into depression, manipulated by my family, drowning in guilt and grief. We had both been victims of their toxicity. But in this life, we were free. "I'm more than happy," I said softly. "I'm whole." He tightened his embrace. "I know things have been weird with your family. I know you've been carrying something heavy that you can't fully explain to me. But I want you to know, I see how much lighter you are now, how much more alive. And whatever decision you made to get here, I support it." I turned in his arms to face him, my hands cupping his face. "I love you," I said fiercely. "In this life, and whatever comes after, I will always choose you." His eyes searched mine, tender and puzzled. "In this life." I kissed him instead of answering, pouring everything I couldn't say into that connection: gratitude, devotion, the fierce protectiveness of someone who had lost him once and refused to lose him again. When we finally pulled apart, he was smiling. "Come on," he said, taking my hand. "Let's go to bed. We have that meeting with the investors tomorrow, and you know how brutal those can be." As we walked back inside, I glanced once more at the city below. Somewhere out there, in a cramped apartment that smelled of desperation and regret, my mother was probably still clutching her phantom grandson's baby clothes. Travis was probably drowning his failures in cheap beer. Tiffany was probably nursing her resentment and humiliation. I didn't pray for them. I didn't curse them. I simply let them go. Because the most powerful form of revenge isn't destruction. It's indifference. And the most beautiful life isn't built on someone else's ashes. It's built on your own terms, brick by brick, choice by choice, with people who love you not because of obligation, but because of who you truly are. 2 years after my rebirth, Ethan and I got married a second time, a small, intimate ceremony on a beach in Santorini, with only our closest friends as witnesses. It wasn't about legality, we were already married. It was about renewal, about honoring the life we'd built together, about celebrating the fact that we had both survived. As the sun set over the Aegean Sea, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, I stood barefoot in the sand, wearing a simple white dress, my hand clasped in Ethan's. The officiant, a local Greek woman with silver hair and kind eyes, spoke about second chances and the courage to choose love over fear. "Do you, Chloe, take this man to be your partner in all things, in this life and beyond?" I looked at Ethan, his blue eyes bright with unshed tears, his smile soft and genuine.
"I do," I said.
"Again and always." "And do you, Ethan, take this woman to be your partner in all things, in this life and beyond?" "I do," he said, his voice steady and sure. "Again and always." We kissed as the sun dipped below the horizon, and our friends cheered, and somewhere far away, In a life I had left behind, my family was still trapped in their delusions. But I was free. I was whole. I was home. 5 years after my rebirth, I became the youngest director in my firm's history. Ethan's company went public, making us both millionaires on paper. We bought a beautiful house in the suburbs, not because we needed the space, but because we wanted a garden, a place to host summer barbecues, a home that felt like a sanctuary. We adopted a rescue dog, a golden retriever mix named Apollo, who had terrible separation anxiety and the sweetest disposition. We talked about maybe adopting a child someday, but we weren't in a rush. We had time. We had choices. One rainy afternoon, as I was working from home, my phone buzzed with a notification. A Facebook friend request from Travis. I stared at it for a long moment, my finger hovering over the screen. Then I hit decline and blocked him. Some doors, once closed, should stay that way.
That